7:08, good morning. It's breakfast on BBC Radio Kent with John and Maggie. Now, the Canterbury MP Julian Brazier says he's deeply concerned a local mental health hospital in the city is being investigated following new allegations of sexual abuse by Jimmy Saville.
I think it's desperately sad to find that this dreadful, evil man, Jimmy Saville, appears to have reached even as far as Canterbury as yet another institution that he appears to have alleged he may have committed abuse in.
Well, St Martin's in Canterbury is one of 8 new hospitals which are now being looked at by NHS officials. The BBC presenter Jimmy Saville, who was revealed as a prolific sex offender, died 3 years ago. Nick Fairweather runs a firm of solicitors based in Whitstable, which specialises in dealing with mental health patients, and he's on the line now. Morning, Nick.
Good morning.
Let me ask you, first of all, are you aware of St Martin's? And if so, what sort of hospital is it?
Yes, of course. St Martin's now is the main acute admission hospital for people with mental health problems for the whole of East Kent, because both Thanet and Ashford have been downgraded, and I think they may have a single ward left. So it's a major hospital. It's got 6 wards. It's been operating for many years locally, and it deals with people who are there on a voluntary basis and on a compulsory section basis.
And of all ages?
Yes, indeed. Yes, absolutely.
And have you heard, before this was revealed yesterday, had you heard anything about historical sex abuse allegations against that may have taken place at the hospital?
No, absolutely not. And I think it's important to say, John, amidst all the horror and concern that obviously this news has brought, that I don't think there's any way that this sort of thing could happen in the modern era. I mean, mental health hospitals are very secure. People aren't allowed into hospital to just go wandering around, which we know Saville was able to do at other NHS institutions.
The point I was going to make is that we now know that he had pretty free access to places like Broadmoor.
Well, indeed, and this is just one of the most. The whole thing is just so staggering that he was given such carte blanche to wander around institutions like Broadmoor, like Rampton, Stoke Mandeville. It's an extraordinary story, and every time another bit of it surfaces, one is just more and more aghast that the scale of the thing, the geographical scale as it's now rolling out, and obviously it's a matter of real concern. And what I hope is that the local NHS Trust, and I'm sure it will look at this very thoroughly, very swiftly, and we'll get to the heart and the truth of what happened whenever it was that these allegations and incidents, if they took place, actually occurred.
Now, this is obviously now in the public domain, and I suppose often the authorities, I don't know what evidence they have, but often they do put it in the public domain, don't they, because they want people to come forward. I mean, I suppose a case will be built if there is a case to be built.
Well, yes. I mean, there are a number of initiatives covering different areas of the public sector, really, and investigations and reports will follow. I mean, as far as the NHS is concerned, there were 28 reports back in June, and the conclusion then was that Saville had abused both staff and patients, age ranges 5 to 75, over several decades at multiple NHS sites. And, it's just so chilling to hear that this has happened. And I think what's important, looking our local patch, I think what's important is that we get to the truth. We find out what happened, when it happened, why it happened, and that helps the victims if these allegations are borne out so far as St Martin's is concerned. Now,
you deal with people with mental health issues all the time. Yes. I'm just wondering how difficult it is to get them to a situation where they're a credible witness. I mean, is that an issue?
Well, it can be. I wouldn't say it's always an issue. I mean, obviously, people with mental health problems have a whole range of difficulties and different conditions, and so it could be an issue. But I wouldn't automatically assume it would be an issue in every case. I mean, obviously, sometimes when people are very, very unwell, they can be psychotic and have florid delusions and the like. But that's not necessarily typical. And obviously, it will need to be investigated in an even-handed way. We'll need to look at whether Jimmy Saville. There's a record of Jimmy Saville visiting St Martin's and when, and records will need to be matched up, etc. So I think it's important people don't think it's just going to be a situation where someone with mental health problems who is very vulnerable, who will find it particularly difficult to come forward, will have a huge hill to climb necessarily, because, as I say, there are other ways of corroborating any accounts that are given, and it needs to be thoroughly and fairly looked into.
Do you believe this is a wide sweep? What I mean by that is, do you think the authorities are really looking at every hospital, and it may come to pass that actually there is no evidence that anything's gone on? You know, are they just throwing a net very wide, do you think?
No, I don't think they are, John, to be honest. I mean, I think it's a fair question, but if you look at the methodology that's been adopted here and the various investigations, the Metropolitan Police and the various inquiries and investigations that have been set up, I don't think this is just throwing a net over random hospitals. I think it's followed a process. I think there must be allegations that have been made by people at St Martin's that have a level of credibility at this stage and are worthy of investigating. So it's very concerning, and as I said before, and I think, you know, as I was listening earlier to Dr. Bird's contribution, the whole thing is on a scale that is absolutely almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
But clearly this has happened, and so in the context of Saville and what he managed to do over the number of years, the number of incidents, and the whole geographical area, the number of institutions involved, perhaps we shouldn't be shocked. But of course, it is very upsetting to hear it in one's own backyard, as it were.
On a legal note, obviously Jimmy Saville is no longer with us. He's dead, so they can't really be. I mean, there could be a claim against the estate, I suppose, and we've heard bits about that. But I'm just wondering how many hoops you have to jump through to come to prove that the establishment, in this case the NHS, was complicit. Do you see what I mean? Is it difficult to take that sort of case forward?
Well, I think it's quite a novel case, John, to be honest, because of course, talking purely within the NHS sphere now, Saville wasn't employed by the NHS, but he was presumably at some level invited into these institutions. So presumably, one would be arguing that that there was negligence and a lack of care and a breach of the duty of care that was owed to these patients. But I mean, I hope in all of this that the most important thing now, I think, is to get to the truth. And I think most of these victims, having worked for victims in these similar situations, it won't be a matter of looking to necessarily secure a huge amount of money, although obviously compensation can be relevant. It's really getting to the truth, getting to recognition of what's happened to them, and getting, just everybody coming about the whole task with openness, transparency and candour. And it may be the sort of a situation where if there are compensation claims, they could be put through some sort of a clearing protocol, so they don't have to go through the traditional litigation process of individual court proceedings progressing through the courts. And I would expect something along those lines to be developed in due course, to be honest.
Nick Fairweather, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Nick Fairweather from Fairweather Solicitors based in Whitstable. We did ask for a response from the trust which runs St Martin's Hospital in Canterbury, and they told us the following. Kent and Medway NHS and Social Care Partnership Trust can confirm that it has been passed historic information regarding Jimmy Saville. We will investigate this evidence thoroughly and, if necessary, ensure that any lessons are learnt for the future. As inquiries are ongoing, we are not in a position to make any further comments.